Paul is quoting from a text that we don't spend a lot of time with here. Who will ascend into heaven, and who will ascend or who will descend into the abyss is a partial quote. Some would suggest taken out of context from the end of Deuteronomy, when Moses is charging the people of Israel as they're just about to cross the Jordan and head into the Promised Land. And he is saying to them, don't tell yourself that this is some difficult thing that I've put before you, this Mosaic law. So don't act like somebody has to go up to heaven in order to grab the scrolls and bring them back down, or somebody's got to go down into the abyss, or in one case he says, have to cross the sea, something which was very frightening to the Israelites, who were for the most part landlubbers. He says, don't make it sound like this is such a difficult law to fulfill. It is in your lips, and it is in your heart. You understand already what this is about. You can apply this even if you don't know the niceties about what you can and can't do on the Sabbath, or what you can and can't do in relationship to making gifts, or how which of the sacrifices are we doing for this holiday. I can't remember. That's okay, he says. You know in your heart, and you know on your lips what the right thing is to do. And Paul is repeating that here to say, you Gentiles, remember he's writing to the Roman church here, the vast majority of whom would have been Gentiles, a small Jewish population there primarily because the emperors kept kicking them out. So he says, you who are Gentiles need to know that you don't have to go to some great lengths converting to Judaism in order to understand God's will. Just like with the Jews, it's in your mouth, it's in your heart. If you believe with your heart, if you confess with your mouth, you're in. You got it. Now it's just a matter of applying it and making it work. So, what does that suggest to you? Comments? If it's that easy, then why doesn't everybody do it?
Is it that easy?
Well, there's the question. The application is where it happens, isn't it? The acceptance of God's law and God's desire for us into our lives is a pretty easy thing to do, right? Even if you break it down into those 5 steps and say you got to do it just right. At the end of the day, that's not all that challenging. There aren't very many people who can't do that. But the application, the actual living out of that, as we'll see starting in chapter 12, becomes a little more challenging. Fortunately, Paul's going to give us one more Sunday before we have to tackle that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's not the application that's the problem. It's like the Old Testament being that passage, that teacher that shows us the pattern that leads to the attitude that we're shown in the New Testament. That's why they're so different. The law no longer applies because it's the attitude that we take towards God and towards His creation. I mean, if you look at the entire Bible, it's all about God reestablishing the relationship He lost with creation because of humanity.
Okay, good. So the distinction between the 2 laws, and Paul addresses this here in a couple of different ways. The distinction between the 2 laws is not a distinction of old and new. The old one's been put out of force. What does he say here about Jesus' role in that? Back in verse 4, Christ is the end of the law. And that word end is not the termination, although it can be applied that way. End is the fulfillment, or the bringing to fruition, the final state when you're completing something and you put the last finishing touch on it. That's the end, and that's the end that's being talked about here. Jesus is the first and only person to live the law perfectly while at the same time showing how living the law results in salvation. Not because we live the law, but because we put ourselves in God's hands, because we have faith in Him. I want to make one more point here, and that is that I've kind of characterized those 5 steps to salvation as being a checklist here, but there's a key component that Paul comes back to in this passage that takes it out of the realm of checklist and puts it into the realm of I'm going to turn my life over to Him. And I think that key component is belief. And I'm not sure that we've really taught enough about what it means to believe. Because we can say we believe in, well, how about the theory of relativity? That seems to work. In my experience, I've never gone near the speed of light, so I don't know if time actually does slow down at that point or not. It certainly seems to slow down at inappropriate times, like when I'm waiting at the doctor's office. But the facts of that seem to work, and people much smarter than I seem to be proving all the time that the theory of relativity is a pretty reliable set of facts. How does it change my life? Not at all, okay? So that's not really the belief that we're talking about here. What is the belief that we're talking about? If it isn't just an assent to facts, then what more? Go ahead.
I was going to say, our belief is not based in what we know personally, but we take as witness what other people said. In this case, the writings of the Bible that Jesus lived. He lived the life that he was supposed to live, and he died in order to redeem us.
Okay.
That's something that people have a problem taking on faith. Well, it can't be. Christ couldn't have been this way. He couldn't have been God in the flesh. He couldn't have been all of this. And yet that belief is the very basis of what Christianity is all about.
Okay. So how will this play out? If we really believe, how will we act differently?
We will care.
Okay. Well, say again.
We will obey.
All right. If we really believe, then we will really obey within the limits of our human capacity and our own self-will and all of that. What else will be a characteristic of true belief as opposed to assent to facts? There's a tough one. Surrender and okay, so we're going to come back to kind of the fruits of obedience are going to be good works, again, to the extent that we have gifts and the ability to do those things and all of that. Still kind of looking for something. Go ahead.
If you love me, you will keep my commandments. So believe. If you believe, then you love.
All right.
You should realize what Jesus has done for you.
Can you believe in Jesus without loving Him?
Yes, you can. The devils believe and tremble.
All right. So now we're coming to the distinction between belief in a fact set and the surrender, I think was the word that someone used, to this loving relationship. Yeah. And I think the acid test for whether we're assenting to facts or whether we actually really believe this stuff is going to be that sense of love that comes out. Can that be faked? Probably. But over time, I think it will make itself evident. Now,
I think that love really in your heart, you want to follow Him. You don't have to follow Him, you want to follow Him.
okay, the desire is there, and when we have one of those slips along the path, that no longer is a, oh, I'm in real trouble here. It is rather, oh, I'm so sorry that I did that again, but I still love you, and I'm back on the path. It's a difference in approach. It's a difference in how we think about what we just did. So that really strikes me as being the essence of what Paul's trying to get us to here. And as we cruise through this last difficult chapter, 10 and then on into 11, we look forward to that 12th chapter, almost like going home. That's the piece that we're going to want to keep bringing ourselves back to. This is not about good works, but good works are going to follow. This is not about living a sinless life, not possible, but righteousness is already in our hands in spite of our occasional bad behavior. Paul keeps bringing us back to this both and relationship. We are a sinful people who have been forgiven of that sin and who are continuously cleansed, he will say, in another place, that this is all being taken care of in process as we live this loving, believing life. Let's wrap this up for now, and we will start next week on wherever we were there, verse 14. Thank you.